Hey everyone, it is Braden here at the Old 9 channel. We have a video coming out in minutes about spells we're going to feature in the 2024 Player's Handbook. I am really hoping. Oh goodness. Anyways, I was saying I really hope that they're going to show us or give us some info on the new Hunter's Mark, the new Divine Smite. Because that'll really determine how well Ranger and Paladin are off. And it would be nice if they showed us some of the updated Conjure and Summon spells. And I'm sure there's a few other spells that would be nice to know about. However, I will be looking right after the video to see if there's an update here on the Beyond website. And hopefully they give us some good info that will help determine how interesting this edition will be. So in about 30 seconds, we'll take this dive together. I'll probably need to turn up the volume because it was just really loud for Premiere music. Alrighty, here we go.
There's been some upgrades as well.
This spell chapter is massive. It has even more spells than spell chapter 2014. It has at least 30 more spells that chapter had, and all of the returning spells have been revisited. Some cases have received functional upgrades. They deal more damage now, or they heal more if they're a healing spell, or range has been extended, or a spell that required concentration before no longer does, or it didn't require concentration, but it does now. There is a ton going on in the chapter. Also,
hopefully there are a lot of spells that require concentration.
How can we can improve how easy it is to use them in play. We, based on a decade of questions about various spells, have essentially embedded the answers to the most common rules questions about the spells into the spells themselves. So I think also people will find that even if a spell's functionality hasn't changed, that it will be easier for them to use because their most frequently asked questions are now answered in the spell itself.
Right.
There's also more art of the spells than before.
Yeah, and that's been amazing.
So you're going to get to see more of the spells. And a lot of the spells have been tightened up. One of the things we did is in some cases, the spells do more but with fewer words. And we were on the hunt to see how many words can we squeeze out of some of these so that you can get to the meat of the spell faster. We wanted you to be able to, in going through this massive chapter, not only find the spell that you want to cast easily, but then when you're reading it, get to the heart of what that spell does without too much fuss. We've also upgraded the presentation of the spells by including in the spells themselves a list of the classes that have a particular spell on their lists. So, for example, if a spell is a wizard spell, its description tells you that it's a wizard spell.
Yeah.
This is going to make spell selection way easier because you no longer are going to have to flip back and forth a spell list elsewhere in the book and the spells themselves when you're trying to figure out what spells you want your paladin or your ranger or your wizard or your warlock or what have you, when you're making your spell selection, you can just look through the spell chapter and you can see right up there near the spell's name, this sorcerer spell or wizard spell.
Of having to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we also have taken the ritual tag and we have moved it out of that line underneath the spell's name, and it is now on the casting timeline because the ritual tag primarily affects the casting time of a spell. We did that not only so that you can spot that immediately when you're looking at how long it takes to cast a particular spell to see if you have the option of casting it ritual, but also because we were putting more information up on that line higher up in the spell. We needed to get the ritual tag out of there.
Yeah.
Presentation improved.
Makes sense.
Clarity of the spells improved. Functionality improved. Many spells have been buffed. There are also, in particular, a number of high-level damaging spells that have had their damage increased so that people will feel good about using them. Flame Strike now deals more damage.
Thank God.
And a number of other higher level
Flame
spells.
Strike needed a damage buff.
There are new ways to use spells and then brand new spells. Would you like to hear about some of those?
I would love to hear about those.
So a number of the new spells, some of them people saw versions of them as a part of the Unearthed Arcana process. And also some of the new spells originally showed up in books like Xanathar's Guide or Tasha's Cauldron. But even spells that appeared in those books first that now are new spells in the player's handbook have often seen upgrades either in functionality or in clarity or both. One whole group of spells that are new in the player's handbook are summoning. And we took the summoning spells that were very popular from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, imported those into the player's handbook, and then upgraded them.
Yeah, there's even more options now, and this is one of my favorite things about the spells because it's just immediate. These have stat blocks in them. You don't have to go hunting through the monster manual. You have everything you need within that spell, and there are options within that.
And those stat blocks now also have the upgraded stat block format that appears not only in this book's creature appendix, but also in spells.
Okay.
And so these monsters are going to be table. Most of these summoning spells also now have art, so people will get to see at least some of the versions of critters that you can summon.
I was advised that this is summon Fae.
And I think these are going to be a ton of fun for people.
You can summon a construct, you can summon dragons, you can summon undead. So virtually anything you would want to summon, and they come with a stat block in the spell.
Yes, and beasts, fae, it goes on and on. Now, because we include summoning spells, we ended up redesigning the conjure spells that were in the 2014 Player's Handbook.
Right.
Because in the 2014 Player's Handbook, you had spells like Conjure Fae, Conjure Celestial, that sort of thing. And those versions had you fishing for stat blocks in the monster manual, and also, unfortunately, often resulted in a whole bunch of creatures showing up on the battlefield.
Taking up initiative.
Yeah, and they really tended to bog down play.
Yeah.
They were often a headache for dungeon masters. And so what we did, because the summoning spells really fill the design niche of bringing a concrete creature onto the battlefield with a stat block, we redesigned all the conjuration spells that were like, and conjure woodland being, that kind of thing, so that they were.
Because of how many conjuration spells, summon spells they've added to here, it would have made a lot of sense if they had included Conjuration Wizard as a revised subclass, but I guess for some reason they didn't do that though.
Really leaning into not the notion of bringing a concrete creature, but instead summoning these spirits of these creatures that help you in some way. So all of those spells have been designed, and people got to see those
We're aware of that.
redesigns in the UA process and
Mm-hmm.
gave essentially thumbs up across the board. And so people will get to see the final
I'm sure we
versions
did.
of those revised conjure spells in the player's handbook. In addition to the new summoning spells, the redesigned conjure spells, all of these other buffed spells, we also have some spells that we brought in and revised in support of some of our subclass design. One example, spell chapter now has the Dragon's Breath spell, has appeared in 5th edition before, and we
Okay.
brought that in because we wanted to give it to the Draconic Sorcerer.
Of course.
Yeah.
And so there are a number of spells
Of
that have been
course.
added that are directly in support of classes, subclasses in the book. Another example
Good.
of that is the Elementalism cantrip, which we designed not only to support the Warrior of the Elements monk, but also as an answer to the various elemental cantrips that we have published at different times in 5th edition. And we pondered bringing all of those cantrips into the player's handbook, but in
Okay, that makes me worried because last we saw the revised Way of the Four Elements, I don't believe they had any spell casting. So the fact that they can cast a cantrip isn't bad, but I'd be very worried if they added spell casting back into it.
instead, we decided to just design one cantrip that allows you to tap into different elements, create different elemental shapes and whatnot. We also have fun things like Steel Wind Strike that people have really enjoyed for the Ranger,
yeah.
now a part of the core game. And also spells that people have never seen before, not even in Unearthed Arcana. And these spells, a number of them are
Steel Wind Strike is a crazy good spell.
connected to named spellcasters in the D&D multiverse. We've already talked about in one of the videos Yolan's Regal Presence as one of these new spells, but we also have Jolarzi's Storm of Radiance. Jolarzi is one of the Circle of Eight, that same organization of wizards that Mordenkainen and Bigby are parts of, and she now has one of her name spells here in this book. It was also fun to include Jolarzi, not only because get one of her spells into the book, it also appears in art, and also, this will be of interest to you, Todd, as a lover of warlocks. Jolarzi is also notable in the Circle of Eight because she's a warlock, not a wizard, and she is specifically a celestial.
Well, boo.
And her spell is all about channeling this this radiant power.
I didn't mean to boo Celestial Warlock.
Celestial Warlock is awesome. We also have a brand new spell associated with Tasha. We have Tasha's Bubbling Cauldron, a higher level spell that when you cast it, summons up a big cauldron and you can dip vials into it and get potions out of it.
Perfect.
So this will now be the fastest way to get potions is with Tasha's Bubbling Cauldron. There are also favorites that have migrated into the book, like Toll the Dead, that cantrip, now part of the core game.
Awesome.
Synaptic Static.
Yes.
We also have new cantrips that people got to see in Unearthed Arcana, like Starry Wisp, Sorceress Burst. Those have made it into the core game. Mind Spike, Mind Sliver, Ice Knife, Vitriolic Sphere, Word of Radiance. Those are among the spells that have now graduated to the game's rulebook.
Cool.
We also, again, could...
So they've added in a lot of Tasha's and even Xanathar's spells into the player's for this player's handbook, which is very nice. It'll help consolidate information and allow just for all these classes, subclasses to use spells that in separate books. So this is good.
Probably talk for hours and won't about all of the spells that have had changes.
And there have been, right? Like there's some have had significant improvements. Maybe it's to do with action economy or wasn't quite hitting that sweet spot. Do you have a few examples of that?
Well, among my favorites are the improved spells. So healing spells have been upgraded, Cure Wound, Healing Word, and so many others, so that now if you decide to spend your bonus action or action healing, you're going to more often than not feel better about doing so than you did before. We have some healing spells like Prayer of Healing that not only saw that sort of boost, but also now Prayer of Healing, its 10-minute cast lets people have the benefits of a short rest. Now you can only enjoy that benefit once per day. Still, that is a major upgrade for that.
That is a major upgrade.
People are also going to see cantrips like Blade Ward, Resistance, Guidance, having either different functionality or better functionality or both. Guidance, for example. Now choose a particular skill when you cast guidance on a person and then concentrate, and while you're maintaining your concentration, the person will get a bonus the ability they make with the chosen. We've made it so that Resistance and Blade Ward might actually see use in play, since those two cantrips have spent a whole lot of the last 10 years often not being used.
Yeah.
And that is something that was on our mind as we went through the spell list. It was not only seeing what spells are not delivering the power they should, and in some very rare cases, which spells are over-delivering, but then also seeing what spells have seen very little use, particularly lower-level spells. What can really just make them more enticing? Then on the other end of the spectrum, when it comes to high-level spells, we're less concerned about how often they're used, because high-level spells are often much more circumstantial. It's also rarer for people to be at the level where they can cast those spells. But it was still important to us to make sure that those spells, when you do get to be high enough level to cast them, or if you're a dungeon master and you're having a monster cast those spells, wanted to make sure that they were delivering the goods for their level. And we also made sure that those spells were as clear as possible. Some of those high-level spells are complex, and we wanted to make sure that, when you finally get there and are able to cast those spells, you can actually decipher what the heck they're doing.
Right.
We also, in some families of spells, made sort of changes to the whole family. I already mentioned us making changes to the Conjure family of spells. Similarly, we've made changes to the shape-shifting family of spells. So we get to polymorph, shape change, true polymorph.
This is some insane art, by the way.
That none of these spells give you anymore a second pool of hit. They now do something that actually I talked publicly about years ago, where I shared publicly that I wished we had made those spells give you temporary hit points. And so now that is indeed what they do. So rather than you essentially having two different hit point pools, your own pool and the pool of form that you have transformed into, you now keep your own hit points, and instead you get some temporary hit points based on the form that you are shapeshifting. We have also standardized the wording that we use for some of our spells. So
these are not like that's not surprising information. They changed how those spells work.
Shapeshifting wording much more consistently for any spell that involves shapeshifting. Implement the emanation area of effect. We also are much clearer about how we're using conditions, damage types, and so forth. I think what people are going to see when they dig into vast spells,
Not
not only a whole lot of fun, some of it new or old fun that has been enhanced, but they're also going to see an entire collection simply easier to deploy at the table, whether you are playing a player character or you're the dungeon master playing a spellcaster. Because one of the things that is always important to remember about the spell chapter is, unlike, say, the class chapter, which is the biggest chapter in the player's handbook, the spell chapter, which is the second largest, isn't just for players.
Yeah.
The spell chapter is the repository of spells for the whole core game. And the dungeon
It's going to be the repository for every single monster in the monster manual too. So them adding all these new spells in also provides access to monsters spells. This is interesting. Art. Earlier, I knew what that was. This is probably a new monster.
dungeon master often needs that part of the player's handbook just as much as. And so
Or even
there
a magic
are
item.
parts of that spell chapter are primarily for the DM. A great example of that is a spell like Guards and Wards. It is extremely rare for a player character to ever cast Guards and Wards, but a
It has
dungeon
happened.
master's NPC spellcaster might cast it to make their dungeon that much harder to integrate.
Well, we do have bastions now
Yes,
in the Dungeon Master's Guide, so that might actually get a little bit more use in the future.
exactly.
True.
But even a spell like Guards and Wards, we have fine-tuned in the new player's handbook. Wish has been fine-tuned. The Wish spell now has some new default options built into it. And also the spell has more to say now about what the ramifications of you using the spell. And there is even in the spell now specific guidance on what happens should you try to use the spell to affect either the city of Sigil or the Lady of Pain. And so please,
I love a Lady of Pain caveat.
Yes,
and a wish spell.
There is a specific Lady of Pain bit now in Wish spell. And many of the spells, even when they don't have much of a functional change, sometimes have a fun bit of flavor change, whether it's a bit about the Lady of Pain in the Wish spell, or it's new details in component part of the spell, or new flourishes about what happens if the spell fails. So I look forward to spending time with the new spell chapter and discovering a number of fun Easter eggs and winks and other things that we have planted throughout the chapter for people to enjoy over the years ahead, because we know the spell chapter is a chapter that people come back to over and over and over again. And so we like to make sure there are goodies for people to discover there. And we have a very similar approach to the magic item chapter of the Dungeon Masters. We put in not only, the sort of the things people expect to find there, but also we like to put fun little prizes.
Is there any other spell that really stands out to you that is like, oh, this is so much better? This is going to get you some.
Two that right away, looking at the list, that I encourage people to look at, really see the kind of new fun that we've added are Chromatic Orb and Cloud of Daggers. So I'll start with Chromatic Orb. In that spell, it still lets you choose damage type like you could before.
Right.
But the thing that we added in, now the orb can bounce. And so now it can potentially bounce from one target to another. So that's what I mean, that this chapter is filled with sort of little bits
that could be crazy
that we've worked in various.
The real question is what the mechanic for that is.
Cloud of Daggers. This spell now lets you move it. as a player,
Oh
when
my
I
god,
have cast
that's
Cloud of Daggers, that is often my main frustration with it. I cast it, and then the monsters move over there.
Yeah.
that is such an improvement on Cloud of Daggers, so that spell may actually see use because it is a good spell. The main issue was that it couldn't move once you cast it. So if that's the only change they made to it, Cloud of Daggers is going to be great.
And or even when I cast Cloud of Daggers in Baldur's Gate 3, as a player, I'm like, I want to be able to move it. So when we got to finalizing the spell chapter, we can now move Cloud of Daggers. We've also made it so that some spells that were really painful to cast in terms of their action economy are far less painful. I think one of the prime examples of that is Flame, the Druid
Yeah.
cantrip. That cantrip was really painful to set up. Like once
Mm-hmm.
you got it going, it could be fun to hurl the fire. Now it is way easier to cast it. And that is actually, funnily enough, another one where it was not only painful to cast tabletop game, but when I was playing Baldur's Gate 3, was excruciating to cast in Baldur's Gate 3. And it was actually while playing Baldur's Gate 3, I thought, they're going to produce flame so that it will not be, there will not be this much friction to cast this script.
And the art is stunning. And this is one of my favorite things about the art that gives you an example is because often you're showing, of course, the caster, the person who made this spell in the first place, casting the spell. Like Melf is casting Melf's Acid Arrow. As primarily a warlock
cool.
player, I'm super excited to see, Armor of Agathis and also Arms of Hadar. Things like that shown that I've never seen really.
And those two spells are in the same painting.
Yeah, a lot of these paintings have two spells going off at the same time,
Yep.
and it's fantastic. You see, Evert's Black Tentacles being cast.
By Evert.
Yeah, by Evert. You see Fireball going off and burning a lot of spiders and probably a lot of spiders on the periphery. And it's this stuff like that that I think helps set up players' imagination.
I figured this was Fireball.
Similarly, you'll be able to not only see magic missile being cast, but the wizard who's casting it has mage armor on.
Yeah.
And it's a rare case for us to actually mage armor. A number of the painting, in their captions, they'll identify the main spells that are being cast. But there
That's
are
good.
even instances where there are other spells in the image as well that we don't highlight in the caption.
There's a charming painting for scrying where one person is casting scrying to talk to their mom, and their mom is casting scrying to see them. So it's like FaceTime.
And that is specifically what I asked for. So with that image, when working with Nitanji, the art director, as well as Josh Herman on this book, I specifically said, I really want a scrying image where it's the wizard and his mom FaceTiming.
Yeah.
And that's what we got.
It's very charming. Every piece of art in this entire book is telling a story. And that's what I appreciate. Or the moment in the adventure, or right before combat, or after combat, or it's demonstrating something you always kind of wondered about. I love seeing spell
I've been
art
trying to
anytime I
think
can.
about it
And
for a while now.
in the history of D&D, sometimes it's not been clear what that spell is in art.
Yes.
All the way back through the edition. Sometimes it's just a laser beam, but not defined. But now you're getting definition.
If we could have added another 32 pages to the book, we would have had even more art. But the book,
It could have. They just didn't want to pay for it.
384 pages,
Yeah.
with more art than a player's handbook has ever had before.
Well, luckily we have a lot more books coming out after. So if you need more spell art, there might be more spell art in those.
When you pre-order the digital physical bundle, you...
Okay, that was it for that video. Let me refresh this page. Let's see. There is not an article yet. They might not release it today. Could release it later. Okay, but that is the video on spells. Just thinking right now, things that I'm excited about that I heard, Flame Strike getting a damage buff much needed. Flame Strike is such a cool spell, but it's just not live up to the hype, and it's a very old spell as well. It's just the damage drop off for it was just horrible. So I really hope. Well, it sounds like they did increase the damage, but I also really hope that when you upcast it, you damage of both the fire and radiant as well. But we'll have to see for that. Cloud of Daggers getting a buff where you can move it. Amazing. There was a lot of spells that they talked about. I didn't. Everything that I heard sounded good, and the changes to polymorph spells I understand. It will make things more in line. Actually, that is going to help break down the divide between marshals and spellcasters, and it's also going to make it a lot easier for people to use those spells. It also means that polymorph is not going to be more powerful than wild shape, and vice versa. So yeah, sounds like good stuff. Good video overall. They did not talk about Divine Smite or Hunter's Mark, which is unfortunate. But I'll keep an eye out for any updates regarding that. But that's going to be it for today's video. If you enjoyed, please feel free to like and subscribe if you want to hear more content from me. And I'll catch you all in the next video. Have a good day. Bye.